Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. So today we're really digging into something that a lot of you have been asking about, the link between obesity and PCOS.
Hmm.
We've got, tons of medical research articles and online resources, and our mission is to kind of try to figure out, how these two conditions interact
Right.
and impact, your metabolic health. And um, I'm honestly, I'm a little intimidated by all the technical jargon.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that we have you here to break it down for us and make it easy to understand.
Yeah. It's definitely a complex area, but once we kind of peel back the layers, I think you'll see it's not as intimidating as it sounds.
Okay.
And understanding this connection is so
Yeah.
important for it really taking charge of your health.
Right.
So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so let's dive right in. The first thing that really jumped out at me when I was going through all this material was how obesity seems to worsen insulin resistance.
Well,
In women with PCOS, now we know that PCOS already makes it harder for the body to use insulin effectively. But what happens when you add obesity to the mix?
that's a great question, and it's a really critical piece of the puzzle. So if you think about insulin as like a key that unlocks your cells to let sugar in for energy, right?
Okay.
So with PCOS, that key just doesn't work quite as well. So your body needs more insulin to kind of do the same job.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you layer on obesity, it's like jamming that lock, completely
Mm-hmm.
making it even harder for those cells to get the energy they need.
So it's like a double whammy effect on your system.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where things get really, really interesting. The research shows that obese women with PCOS, they develop something called hepatic insulin resistance, which essentially means their liver starts overproducing glucose.
So not only is your body struggling to use the sugar that's already there, now there's extra sugar floating around
Yes, you
because
go.
of your liver.
It's like turning up the heat on an already simmering pot. And this combination, PCOS plus obesity, significantly increases the risk of glucose intolerance and type 2 diabetes.
And we're not talking about a small increase here. The research mentioned a tenfold increase in the risk of abnormal glucose tolerance for obese women with PCOS compared to those with PCOS at a healthy weight.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
it really puts things into perspective, right? So
Yes.
imagine like, a group of 100 women with PCOS. If they all maintain a healthy weight, maybe statistically 10 might develop glucose intolerance. But if they're obese, that number could jump to nearly all of them.
Oh, wow. That's
So,
a scary thought.
yeah.
It really highlights just how important it is to manage your weight, especially if you have PCOS. So,
Yeah.
for someone who's listening and they're concerned about this risk, what can you do? What are some early signs of glucose intolerance that you should be aware of?
That's a great question for your doctor, but some common signs include, increased thirst, frequent urination, unexplained weight loss, and fatigue. And the key is to catch it early so you can take steps to prevent it from, progressing to type 2 diabetes.
Okay, so we've talked about insulin resistance, but what about cholesterol? I know that we have some research on how obesity impacts lipid metabolism
Yes,
in women with PCOS.
absolutely. And this is where that term dyslipidemia comes in, which essentially means an unhealthy balance of fats in your blood.
Okay.
Too much of the bad cholesterol and not enough of the good.
So for somebody listening who's, had their cholesterol checked, that's what the doctor's talking about when they say good and bad cholesterol.
Exactly. And studies show that PCOS, especially when it's coupled with a larger waist circumference, tends to lead to lower levels of that good cholesterol and higher levels of the bad stuff.
Okay, and why is that bad? What does that mean for your health?
Well, over time, high levels of bad cholesterol can build up in your arteries, forming plaque that restricts blood flow.
Uh-oh.
This increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, and other serious cardiovascular problems.
So it's not just about fitting into your favorite genes, it's really about, your heart health,
Right.
protecting yourself.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting twist. The research also showed that these unhealthy cholesterol changes can happen even in women with PCOS who aren't considered obese.
Really? So even
No.
if you're within a healthy weight range, PCOS can still have an impact on your cholesterol levels.
That's right. It underscores the fact that PCOS has its own unique influence on lipid metabolism, regardless of your weight. However, obesity definitely adds fuel to the fire, making those negative changes even more pronounced.
So it's like a 1-2 punch. PCOS sets the stage, and then obesity comes in and really throws things off balance.
Precisely. And to complicate things even further, there's another factor that we need to consider here, androgens, which are often called male hormones like testosterone.
Okay,
Yeah, so now you might be thinking, what do male hormones have to do with any of this?
Huh.
Well, women with PCOS often have higher levels of testosterone than women without the condition.
Yeah.
And this can have a significant impact on their metabolic health.
So are we talking about those like stereotypical male hormones that make you grow a beard and have a deep
So
voice?
not exactly. While testosterone is present in both men and women, it plays different roles in each sex.
Okay.
So in women, even small increases in testosterone can lead to things like acne, excess hair growth,
Yeah.
and irregular periods, which are all common symptoms of PCOS.
Right, those classic PCOS symptoms.
Yeah.
But how do these hormones tie back into what we've been talking about with cholesterol and insulin resistance?
That's where the research gets really fascinating. Studies have shown a strong connection between higher testosterone levels, a larger waist circumference, and unhealthy blood fat levels,
Okay.
specifically in women with PCOS.
So it's almost like these three things, higher testosterone, more belly fat, and wonky cholesterol, are all ganging up to like wreak havoc on your metabolic health.
That's a great way to put it. And to make matters even more complex, higher testosterone levels in PCOS are also linked to insulin resistance, which, as we discussed earlier, can lead to a whole host of other problems.
Okay, so it seems like we're talking about a little bit of a vicious cycle here. PCOS leads to higher testosterone, which contributes to insulin resistance and weight gain, especially around the belly, which then further exacerbates the insulin resistance. It's like a domino effect where one thing just leads to another.
You got it. And it really highlights the importance of taking a holistic approach to managing PCOS. It's not just about treating individual symptoms. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of these factors and addressing the root causes.
That makes sense. This brings up a question I had about body fat distribution earlier. We were comparing, women with and without PCOS to like differently shaped apples.
Right.
What's the significance of like where you carry your weight, especially for women with PCOS?
That's a great point, and it's a crucial piece of the puzzle. Women with PCOS tend to have more upper body obesity,
Okay.
regardless of their overall BMI.
So even if a woman with PCOS isn't necessarily obese based on her overall weight, she could still be at increased risk if she carries a lot of weight around her midsection.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to look beyond just the number on the scale.
Okay.
This type of fat distribution is known as android obesity, and it's particularly dangerous because it's linked to a higher risk of cardiovascular disease and insulin resistance.
So it's almost like having a bullseye on your metabolic health if you have PCOS and carry a lot of weight around your middle.
That's a good analogy.
Okay.
It underscores the importance of understanding your body composition and fat distribution, not just your overall weight.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense, but I imagine some of our listeners might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. By this point, we've covered a lot of ground and it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin to address all of this?
I understand it can definitely feel overwhelming, especially when you're first learning about these connections. But remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about how obesity and PCOS interact, the better equipped you are to make informed decisions about your health.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some practical steps people can take. What are some of the most impactful things women with PCOS can do to improve their metabolic health?
Well, the good news is that even small changes can make a big difference.
Okay.
And one of the most powerful tools you have is weight management.
You're not suggesting that everyone needs to go on a crash diet, are you?
No, not at all. In
Okay.
fact, restrictive diets often backfire and can even be harmful.
Okay.
What we're talking about here are sustainable lifestyle changes
Mm-hmm.
that you can maintain over the long term.
So what would be some examples of those sustainable changes?
Well, it could be as simple as incorporating more movement into your day, choosing healthier foods more often,
Okay.
or finding ways to manage stress.
Okay.
Even a small amount of weight loss, as little as 5% of your body weight, can have a remarkable impact on your metabolic health.
That's really encouraging to hear. You don't have to make like drastic changes to start seeing benefits.
Exactly. And the benefits extend beyond just weight loss. Studies have shown that losing even a small amount of weight can lead to improvements in blood sugar control, insulin sensitivity, testosterone levels, cholesterol levels, and blood pressure regulation. It's like hitting the reset button
Wow.
on many of the metabolic challenges we've been discussing.
So it's almost like a ripple effect. One positive change triggers a cascade of improvements throughout your body.
That's a great way to put it. Weight loss can really help to break that vicious cycle we talked about earlier where obesity and PCOS kind of exacerbate each other's negative effects.
So even though we've been painting a somewhat bleak picture
Yeah.
with all these interconnected risks, there is hope.
Absolutely. It's about empowering women with PCOS to take control of their health and make sustainable changes that can lead to long-term improvements.
That makes sense. But what about, those who struggle with weight loss? We all know it's not always as simple as just eating less and moving more.
You're absolutely right. Weight loss can be incredibly challenging, and it's important to remember that you're not alone in this journey. Don't be afraid to seek support from healthcare professionals who can help you develop a personalized plan that addresses your specific needs and goals.
So, like finding a doctor or a registered dietitian who understands PCOS and can help you kind of navigate the often confusing world of nutrition information.
Exactly. They can be invaluable resources, especially if you have other health conditions or are taking medications that might affect your weight.
Okay, so we've talked about weight management, but are there other things women with PCOS can do to improve their metabolic health?
Absolutely. Regular exercise is crucial. It not only helps with weight management, but also improves insulin sensitivity, reduces stress, and boosts mood.
Are there any particular types of exercise that are most beneficial?
A combination of cardio and strength training is ideal.
Okay.
Cardio helps to improve heart health and burn calories, while strength training builds muscle mass, which helps your body utilize glucose more efficiently.
Makes sense. What about diet? Are there any specific dietary recommendations for women with PCOS?
There isn't a one-size-fits-all diet for PCOS,
Okay.
but there are some general guidelines that can be helpful, focusing on whole, unprocessed foods like fruits, vegetables, lean protein, and whole grains. It's a good place to start.
What about those like trendy diets you hear about all the time? Keto, paleo, intermittent fasting. Are any of those beneficial for women with PCOS?
That's a great question, and it's something you should definitely discuss with your healthcare provider. Some of these diets may be helpful for some individuals, but they're not right for everyone, and they can even be harmful if not followed correctly.
So it's always best to get personalized advice from a qualified professional
Yes,
rather than relying on Dr. Google or the latest fad diet.
I completely agree. And remember, this is a journey, not a race. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories and focus on making sustainable changes that you can stick with for the long haul.
I love that advice. It's so important to be kind to yourself and focus on progress, not perfection. Speaking of challenges, we briefly touched on this earlier, but I wanted to circle back to the topic of metabolic syndrome. Can you remind us what that is and why it's such a concern, particularly for women with PCOS?
Of course, metabolic syndrome is essentially a cluster of conditions that occur together,
Okay.
increasing your risk of heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. These conditions include high blood pressure, high blood sugar, excess body fat around the waist, and abnormal cholesterol or triglyceride levels.
And how does PCOS fit into all of this?
Well, the combination of obesity and PCOS dramatically increases the risk of developing metabolic syndrome. It's like these two conditions create a breeding ground for a whole host of health problems.
So it's not just about the individual risks of obesity and PCOS, it's about how they work together to kind of amplify the danger.
Exactly, and that's why it's so critical to address both conditions proactively.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks and the challenges, but let's end on a more hopeful note. What are some positive takeaways for women with PCOS who are listening to this?
Despite all of these complexities, the most important thing to remember is that you have the power to take control of your health. Even small lifestyle changes can have a significant impact, and there are resources available to support you along the way.
So it's not about feeling overwhelmed or defeated, it's about feeling empowered to make positive changes.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the more you understand about your body and how these conditions interact, the better equipped you are to make informed decisions that can improve your overall health and well-being.
That's a great message to leave our listeners with.
And before we move on, I want to add that it's crucial to approach this topic with compassion and understanding. PCOS is a complex condition, and obesity is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
There are many factors that contribute to both conditions, and it's important to avoid blame or shame.
I couldn't agree more. It's about working with our bodies, not against them. And it's about advocating for ourselves and seeking the support we need to thrive.
Well said. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.
Yeah, that's so important. And, as we're talking about all of this, it makes me think about like the bigger picture.
Mhm.
We live in a world where obesity rates are rising and PCOS is becoming increasingly common. So it feels like these two conditions are almost becoming intertwined on a societal level, too.
You're absolutely right to point that out. It's definitely a concerning trend, and it underscores the importance of really understanding these interconnected health challenges.
Right.
We need to be addressing both obesity and PCOS from a holistic perspective, considering not only the individual factors, but also the broader societal influences that kind of contribute to these conditions.
So it's not just about individual choices, it's also about like the environment we live in and the systemic factors that can make those healthy choices more difficult.
Yeah. Exactly. Things like, access to affordable, nutritious food, safe places to exercise, and reliable healthcare all play a role.
Right.
And of course, we need better education and awareness about these conditions
Yeah.
so people can make informed decisions about their health.
It sounds like a multifaceted problem that requires a multifaceted solution. It's not just about, telling people to eat less and move more. It's about creating an environment that supports healthy choices.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We need a more comprehensive approach that addresses both the individual level through lifestyle changes and medical management and the societal level by tackling those systemic issues that contribute to these conditions.
Now, before we wrap things up, I wanted to circle back to something that really struck me in the research. We talked a lot about how obesity can worsen insulin resistance in women with PCOS
Right.
and increase the risk of things like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. But there was also some mention of the impact on fertility.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes, absolutely. This is an area that's often overlooked, but it's incredibly important for women with PCOS who are hoping to start a family. So insulin resistance can actually disrupt ovulation, making it more difficult to conceive.
So for someone listening who's struggling with infertility, this might be a piece of the puzzle they haven't considered before.
It's definitely something to be aware of, and it's not just about conceiving. Insulin resistance can also increase the risk of complications during pregnancy, like gestational diabetes.
Wow, I had no idea there was such a strong connection between insulin resistance, PCOS, and like reproductive health.
Yeah, it's a complex interplay of hormones and metabolic processes, but it highlights why managing your weight and improving insulin sensitivity is so crucial, especially for women with PCOS.
It really drives home the point that this goes beyond just like fitting into a certain dress size. It's
Right.
about your overall health and well-being, both now and in the future.
Exactly. And I think that's a great note to end on. Well, we've covered a lot of complex information today. The key takeaway is that knowledge is power. The more you understand about the connection between obesity and PCOS, the more empowered you are to make informed choices about your health and take proactive steps to manage these conditions.
I couldn't agree more. And for our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of the relationship between obesity and PCOS. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are resources available, and even small changes can make a big difference. Keep those questions coming, keep learning, and most importantly, take care of yourselves until next time.